Hello, pastel artists. I'm here to discuss some of the things that we're going to be doing here in this class. First thing I want to talk about is the paper that we're going to use. I believe I had suggested different brands, but I want to talk a little bit about those papers because it's really the paper that makes probably the biggest difference, I feel, as far as your pastel paintings are concerned. Now, the opinions expressed here are solely my own. So if you don't like the papers I've suggested or you don't like what I'm doing, try something else. I highly recommend that you test out your own paper samples to see what you like. There are some, however, that I think are probably going to make your work come out better than other brands, and I'll let you know that too. So the first paper that I'm going to talk to you about is called Uart Paper. Now, I have a whole pile of it here in this little bag. And ordinarily, if we were working together face to face, I would give you samples and let you test them out. Because we can't do that, I'm just going to explain to you what this paper is. This paper is, it comes in different colors. This particular color is like a light buff color, but they also have black, and I believe they have other colors as well at this point. They're definitely expanding the color lines. The cool thing about Uart paper is that it is very tough. It is a sanded finish, which means, I don't know if you can hear it, it's got sand on it. And the good thing about that is it really holds the pastel super well. Some of the papers are not very coarse or not very rough, and they won't hold the pastel as well as a paper such as this. The other cool thing about it is it comes in different grades of roughness. So this particular little piece is a 400 grit. Let's see what else I've got in here. 400, which is kind of like a middle of the road grit. There are others up to 800. 800 has a fairly smooth tooth to it. It's still sanded and it's still very coarse, and it'll certainly hold tons of pastel. But it's just a little smoother finish to it. I think the lowest grade they have, or the coarsest grit they have, is like a 230 or 320. I kind of a little dyslexic here. I get things mixed up. But in any event, that's a pretty coarse paper, very rough to the touch. Because I almost always use a sanded finish on my paper can be really tough on fingers. So I don't usually recommend to students to blend with a finger. In fact, I almost never do. I might just kind of push the pastel into the paper if I can't get good coverage, but ordinarily I don't do this kind of thing because it's going to wear down my fingertips and I'm going to be sore, and we don't want to do that. We want to love our pastels. So anyway, this paper comes in pads. This Uart paper comes in pads. It also comes in big sheets. The big sheets are going to be your most cost effective. I couldn't tell you exactly how much they are, but that's generally the way I buy it, is in big sheets, and then I cut it down to the sizes that I need. Also, as far as paper goes, for some reason, manufacturers like the size 18 or 12 by 18 or 9 by 12. It must have something to do with the manufacturing. I'm not sure. However, those are not standard frame sizes. So my feeling is that if you're going to get paper or start a painting, put it on a piece of paper that's a standard frame size. And you can look those up online at any place that sells frames. Just off the top of my head, like an 8 by 10 is a standard frame size. Smaller, 5 by 7, 11 by 14, and I think it's 16 by 20. But it's just going to save you a lot of headaches as far as framing when you've done a piece that you want to put in a frame, to make it on a standard size piece of paper that will fit into a standard frame. Otherwise, you're going to have to go to the expense of having a frame made, a custom frame, and that gets expensive. So again, try to stick with frame size or paper. Make your paper about the same size as a standard frame size. So this Uart paper is the paper that I use most frequently. I know it says Canson Touch, but that's not what it is. This is Uart paper, and I guess it's made by the Uart company. It's spelled capital U-A-R-T. And I use that pretty much exclusively at this point. And, so it goes to show you, I really do like the paper. Another popular pastel paper is Canson, and I know I'm going to goof up the name because I just do. It's Mi Tientes, I think. I don't know if you can read this the way I have it spelled. Capital Miteintes, made by Canson. A very popular pastel paper. It has two very distinct surfaces. The one has kind of a waffly finish to it, and the other is fairly smooth. And I'm going to try, you probably can't see this. Oh, yes, I think you can, just a tiny bit. This is the side that has that waffly finish. And a lot of artists really make that work for them. However, I find it very distracting because I have to work really hard to fill those little tiny holes in. This is the other side, very, very smooth by comparison. The thing that I don't like about Canson paper is it's fairly lightweight, and it won't stand up to different washes I use for underpaintings. If I use a alcohol underpainting as a wash, or even water, this paper will buckle. It's just not sturdy enough to handle that sort of thing. So if I'm going to do an underpainting, I won't use this paper. If it's going to be a wet underpainting anyway. I mean, it's great for other things. It's really nice for detailed work, but when I tend to do a lot of underpaintings, so this paper is not particularly suitable for what I do. This is relatively inexpensive too, so I think that's what makes it a very popular pastel paper. Let's see. Ooh, I have a bunch of different things here. I have something called Velour paper, and it's very soft. It's fuzzy. You probably can hear it, but it's fuzzy. It kind of reminds me of the paintings of Elvis done on I don't know if it was velour or what it was, but anyway, a lot of artists like this paper. The problem I have with it is the fuzziness gives kind of a diffused edge. It's not a sharp, crisp edge all the time, and I kind of like a sharper, crisper edge, you know. And if I want to diffuse it, I will soften the edge. In this case, it's almost always going to be kind of soft and diffused. It's just the nature of the paper. The other thing is it does not hold the pastel particles super well, and they can be knocked off somewhat fairly easily. I had an artist, a student artist, who did a beautiful little sketch of an apple with pastel and took it to the trash can because she was starting to get a buildup of pastel dust on it, and she took it over there to kind of knock it off the back. So she tapped the back and the dust flew off, and she was just left with kind of a red blotch. So she lost all the beautiful detail that she had intentionally put in there. So this, to me, I mean, I suppose if I used it a lot, I might be okay with it, but I don't really care for it all that much. Other artists do. You know, again, this is just my opinions. It comes in 19 by 27 sheets. The sheets at the time that I bought this, which was a couple years ago, were around $7. So anyway, it's fairly inexpensive. So, you know, that's another option. This particular paper is made by Unison. Unison is a company that makes pastels. They're really well known for their pastels. And I bought this sheet of paper just to try it out. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. It has a coarse texture to it. It is sanded. And it's actually got a really nice finish to it. It's heavyweight. But, oddly enough, it smells kind of weird. I don't know what it is. But I don't like the way it smells. And even though I've had this for a few years, it still smells kind of funky to me. So, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of the paper. If it's even still being made, because I haven't bought it in a few years. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt. This paper is called Color Fix. And as the name implies, you can get it in a large variety of colors, which can be a good thing. It can also be an issue. It kind of depends on what you're going for. It's a nice sturdy paper, heavyweight, and it will take an alcohol wash or a water wash very well without any issues at all. The only, I don't want to call it a problem because it's not really a problem, it is only a problem for me, is that if I choose to do an underpainting on this, this color will show through the underpainting sometimes, And I would rather tint the paper myself rather than rely on a whole sheet of one colored paper. So that's why I kind of go back to the Uart paper, which is that buff colored paper. Again, because I can tint that any color I want to. I don't have to depend on whatever the manufacturer has decided. And you know, that can be a problem. It can't be a problem. I mean, it's really just something to be aware of. So if I'm going to do it myself, I prefer the white paper, the buff colored paper, because I can tint that. I can tint one small area a particular color. I don't have to rely on the manufacturer to do that. This paper, another kind of paper, another sanded paper, is called Sabertooth. I have a couple pieces of this to play around with. Another nice, fairly sturdy paper. It's a sanded surface, which is very interesting. You know, you would think that it has a lot of the same qualities as the Uart paper, but I just don't like it. I don't know why. I just don't care for it. And it doesn't hold as many layers of pastel as the Uart paper, so I don't know. It's just another option that's out there. You might love it. And the only way to know is to actually try it yourself. There is a paper that I don't have any samples of. It is called, it's by Canson again. It's Canson, I'm going to goof the name up, I'm sorry. My Tente's Touch. And it's a sanded pastel paper, nice heavy weight. I don't have any samples of it with me, but it's a great paper to use. The fact that it's heavyweight makes it so that you can use a alcohol wash on it without any trouble at all. The thing I don't like about it, see, I'm going to tell you not only the stuff I like, but I'm going to tell you all the things I don't like. It has an edge around it, which doesn't have the sanded finish to it. And unfortunately, when I tape a piece of paper down to a board that I'm going to be using, and I take that tape off after I'm done with the painting, the surface of that paper that on that white edge comes off. I'm like, I don't like that, you know? I don't know why it doesn't hold up to tape, but it doesn't. And so for me, it's kind of an issue. Okay, and what I have here is just some black lightweight pastel paper. And the reason I'm showing you this is just this. Although it's a lightweight paper, and I probably wouldn't use it just because I prefer the heavier weight papers, colors show up on black paper like unbelievably. I can't really do an underpainting on it because of course it's really real dark, but Uart has the black papers, and the colors just jump off the page because of the black and the contrast with the black. So just, you know, another thing to be able to think about and to play around with. There is one paper that I do not recommend, and the reason for it is because it definitely is not going to hold up to any kind of wet medium, and that is Pastel Card by LeCarte. To see it, it's got a nice kind of rough surface, nice even finish, and it looks beautiful. But if it gets wet with anything, whether it's alcohol or water, anything, even a drop of spit, it's going to lift that surface right off. I don't know what they use to adhere this finish to it, but it's not soluble. I mean, it is soluble, and it will remove the surface if you go over it again and you get right down to the bare paper. It's like, that's not going to do it for me. I need to have that coarse texture throughout the whole thing. So again, this is the one paper I don't recommend that you spend your money on. It's nice if you're only going to use a dry medium, like pastel, just the sticks themselves. But if you're going to try to do an underpainting with any kind of a wet medium, it is just not going to work. It's just not going to work. And so anyway, I think that pretty much sums it up as far as the papers go. Oh, one more thing. There's always one more. This is something that I made myself. This is a piece of foam core. Let me see it. There it is. You can see it's just a piece of foam core, which I coated over with something called pumice gel. Pumice gel is made by the Golden Company, or at least the stuff I have is made by the Golden Company. and it's, I don't know if I can open this, but it's kind of a grayish, I can't open it, colored thing, and it goes on, dries white, and it leaves this awesome pumice rough texture to it. I don't know if you've touched foam core. It's got a very smooth finish to it, but you put this stuff on and all of a sudden it is so coarse and so wonderful to paint on. I'm trying to hold it so that you can see some of the texture, and I might not be able to, but this is something to play around with. I bought the pumice gel years and years ago, and it, you know, just to play around with it, it's a lot of fun to play with. Anyway, I love the texture that I'm able to get with this. In fact, sometimes when I brush it on, I just use a house painting brush, and I just kind of put it on at all different angles just to get a little bit of weird texture going there. I like to leave the brush marks in it. I don't like it real smooth, so I like to leave those brush marks in it. And they kind of act almost like a surprise. I don't know if you can see my ceiling here in my living room. It says one of those swirled ceilings. It's kind of like that. You know, you never know exactly what's going to be on your paper. So that's fun to play with. Which reminds me also, I've done the same thing with watercolor paper. I used to do some watercolors before I got into pastels. And I can apply that pumice gel to the watercolor paper. Because if you ever tried to use watercolor paper with pastels, this is it's got a real texture to it, which is great for watercolor, but not so great for pastels. So, and it's hard to work against, and I found that I was fighting with it. But I put the pumice gel on there, and although it still has that kind of rough texture of the paper when it was manufactured, it just kind of evened it out a little bit with the pumice gel. The one thing I haven't tried is putting multiple layers of the pumice gel on top of this, and I think that would make it an even better surface to work on. So anyway, the pumice gel is one of those things that I wouldn't necessarily recommend to you to try this early in the game, but as you had more experience with using pastel, it might be something to try just to experiment with. It's just a lot of fun. The thing with pastel is it's so much fun to play around with. I never get bored. I've said that 100 times. I don't get bored with it. There is something new for me to explore and to test out all the time, and I get very excited about that. So anyway, I'm going to log off right now, and I will be talking to you in a little bit. If you have any questions, hang on to those, and please ask me when we're done here. Okay, thanks. Bye.